Who is a resident of Rock Island and is currently running for mayor of Rock Island. I'd like to start by saying thank you for taking some time to answer some questions, spend some time with us today. And if we could get started with you providing an overview of what motivated you to run for mayor, and then we'll kind of move into some more specific questions.
Most definitely. So I'm a lifelong resident of Rock Island. I'm born and raised in Rock Island. I graduated from high school, Rock Island High School in 2011. Played football. I was heavily involved in a lot of different things. I went away to school, started off at Illinois in Carbondale. I walked on the football team there. I was studying sports administration. I switched over to history education, but I transferred on a football scholarship to William Penn in Oskaloosa. Played ball there, excuse me, and then I ended up transferring again to West Illinois in Macomb, and I got my degree in history and political science. And it was important for me to come back home because a lot of my peers before me, they do not feel they have an opportunity or access to whatever it is that they want to in their pursuit of happiness, right? And so that's not saying that I would do that. I had the responsibility of accomplishing this tall task solely, but I knew that I could drive an initiative, work with people to change that. So I got to work, started an organization immediately upon coming home. About a week into coming home, I started an organization by the name of Tut Cities Entertainment. And King Tut, a very recognizable pharaoh, but he represents a part of the world that African descent. And so that's representation. And it's representation in a positive format. And so some things that we've been involved in and led the charge behind our mission, behind the community involvement and inclusiveness and opportunities is Chase Randall's Dream Big Youth Camp. We partnered that with our first big event, which was the 50-40 basketball shootout, which commemorates the 2011 Boys State Championship team, which was the first championship team in Rock Island's history. My graduating class, shout out. Nice. And so it's our fourth year going into that for the camp and the fifth year of the shootout. We partnered with the NAACP of Rock Island County, which I'm a member of, and we did a Stay Woke Summit, which I think where we did, the initiative there was to get millennials, quote unquote, more aware and potentially involved behind the civic process and the importance of civic duties and how you can affect change, yes, right here at home. And we did that for about 3 years. And Travis Hearn, Flag Football League. I coach football at the high school as well, and this is my 5th season. I did have the opportunity to coach the Quad City Steamrollers last year, and that I'm 1-0. The pandemic did end that, but I have a 100% record, so I'm in uncharted territory, I think. Nice. But this summer, I started Resolution, which was a multiracial coalition that. Our first initiative was to look at police reform and doing so in a way that holds accountability not only to law enforcement, but to our community as well. Because we do believe that while we got to hold law enforcement accountable, we have some, Michael Jackson said, look in the mirror. Yep. And that's tough to do sometimes, but we have to do that. And so that's the beautiful thing about it. And that's how we were able to, I think, galvanize people on quote unquote both sides of the aisle. Which I hate that term of the aisle, but that's how people associate that. Right. And so I think we have been successful in getting people together. But to answer your question in a nutshell, Natasha, in a long nutshell, is that all of that kind of speaks to why I'm running for mayor of Rock Island. In my professional life, I'm currently a family advocate at the Martin Luther King Center, and that means I go throughout Rock Island County, work with families. From probations to Bethany, DCFS, all these different agencies. And so that means I'm tapping into a lot of different needs in a lot of different areas and a lot of different socioeconomical situations. And so that's a great opportunity for me to learn the problems, right? And communicate with people who have those real problems, real people. And so I do that currently, and I also have a background in the financial world as a banker and a financial representative. And so between all that and doing that in Rock Island, and my ability to lead with a team by first listening, I believe is what we need is in a leader of Rock Island at this time, and I believe I'm that person.
So it sounds like you are very much involved in your community, and I think that's really important. If you're vying for a position to lead your community, you have placed yourself strategically in many aspects. It's not just in the school district or just in, finances. So you have a lot of experience with that, which kind of leads into my next question with what knowledge and experience do you bring to the position? And I think you've tapped into that already, but aside from that, just in the last, since graduating from college and whatnot, is there anything else that you feel like you have experienced with like family, or, is this kind of like something your family has always been involved in, and community and inspiration, I guess, is what I'm interested in knowing about.
Well, certainly. It's been a staple in my life all my life. My family has always been and have a public servant heart. My dad was an alderman for 16 years right in Rock Island. My mom is an artist. She's very musically inclined. She spent numerous hours, volunteer time to teach the arts. She's been ministering music, directing choirs, teaching piano lessons, vocal lessons, which is important to giving back. My grandparents, so my grandma was in charge of the housing department and complex. That's a public housing, so as service, right? And my grandpa, were heavily involved in church, and they both were union men. So they went to work, and they understand the value of a hard day's work and providing for a family. And my other grandma, she was in the nursing field, and so and you put that together with my family. That is, they always taught me to be involved, not only involved but aware of what's going on, and that means reading the paper, and that means watching the news, and that means asking questions, and that means understanding that your answer may not always be the right answer, but you have to seek out the best answer. And so service is important because it takes a village, and I'm very fortunate that I had the upbringing that I had, and that allowed me to tap into what's important behind the mission that we're trying to accomplish here, but also the work ethic that I've been able to maintain to get to this point is very crucial to my upbringing, from my upbringing, excuse me.
Right. How do you feel like, in the position that you're in now, that your family, is your family coming together to support you in this mission? And, what do you feel like you kind of have this background that you brought to the table, but as you continue to move forward, how are your family supporting you and making you, or helping you execute kind of what your plan is?
Very supportive. And maybe the best form of support I'm getting from them is, knowing that I can just lean on them. It's not necessarily got to be strategy.
Yep.
I know I can go to. Well, my grandparents are all deceased, but my mom and my dad are still here, so I talk to them regularly. It may be about the campaign, it may not be, but the conversations we have that's not about the campaign are probably the most important, right? And so even with my siblings and my cousins, being able to, they keep me humble. For one, that's important.
Yes, I agree. I wholeheartedly.
They keep me humble. They tell me, they're probably gonna tell me I wore my sweatshirt the wrong way here in this interview. My shoes probably the wrong way, and my hair is probably messed up at this point. So that keeps you humble, because that allows you to always remember that, as our grandparents told us, someone's always bigger and better than you. And you can take that a lot of different ways, but I like to take it to understand that you're not more important than anybody else, or you're not better than anybody else, but they're no better than you. And so that takes an all-in and unified approach.
I like that, because I think sometimes we need others to help us stay grounded.
Most definitely.
And we lose sight of that, I think, when we get kind of mixed up in all of the hustle and bustle with things. So I'm going to go into a more specific question in asking you what you have done to intentionally use an equitable approach when campaigning. And so really I'm thinking specifically about reaching people in, I know in one of your interviews you mentioned about how diverse Rock Island is. Mm-hmm. And so I'm curious to know how you're making sure that you're reaching all of the diverse groups in the city, because I always think about those that don't necessarily have access to, internet, social media, and are more of that traditional face-to-face approach. And I know that obviously that's been challenging with COVID, but kind of how have you made sure that you're reaching and connecting with those individuals?
That was of paramount importance when I built my team. Mm-hmm. And so I knew for some time, even prior to my announcing, that I was going to run for mayor. Mm-hmm. And so when I built my team, which consists of 21 people, it's very diverse. It makes up Rock Island, and I love the diversity of Rock Island. And so my team consists of, like I said, 21 individuals. That ranges and it varies, with sex, race, age, ideologies, beliefs, faiths, ethnicity, everything I could tap into. Because, as I said before, I'm one person. Mm-hmm. And I know I have certain abilities to lead and do certain things and galvanize people, but my strength in doing that, I know my power lies with getting the right people to do the jobs that are experts in certain fields and that you can trust, right? And so the diversity in this team, while they're talented in certain areas, research, media, field operations, all these different things, they provide perspective from the community that you're alluding to. Mm-hmm. And it's refreshing to know that the vision I put forth upon the start of this, for the most part, is lining up with a lot of those concerns. But beyond my team, we've been able to tap into virtually every community in Rock Island, which, unfortunately, to your point, I think why you're asking me that, it seemed like we are one of the first campaigns, especially a mayoral campaign, to be willing to and actually seek out a lot of these communities that have been neglected or just take advantage of the fact that typically we're not aware of these elections, mm-hmm. and so they just don't talk to us or them.
And and you point that out, and I think that's so important. So you talk about how diverse Rock Island is and how diverse your team is, and I want to know more specifically when you say different beliefs, ideologies, difference in race. Can you speak more specifically about that when you talk about that? Because when you think about the diversity of Rock Island and what your Hispanic population is, the Black population, Asian population, all of those things. And so I'm looking for more specifically how that aligns with the community in terms of what is the makeup of your team, without necessarily saying names specifically, but...
No, of course. So I'm a historian by whatever. That's my academic, right? And so one thing I learned about the Greek history is that they had elders, mm-hmm. right? And these elders were people who were older, and they didn't have voting power necessarily. They didn't have the opportunity or ability to lead by having a title. Mm-hmm. So they could be president or wherever the state's term was. And then you have other statesmen who were younger and had to be a certain age, but they were younger. But they had voting power, they made decisions. And so what I found to be beautiful about this makeup that the Greeks had is that it took the youthfulness, the creativity, and the vibrancy of the youth, and it partnered with the wisdom and the knowledge of those elders, and allowed the youth to take all that energy mm-hmm. and to make decisions. And the elders knew that might bring change, mm-hmm. right? You can't progress without change, but you cannot change without having and understanding the foundation, and that's what the elders provided. And so when I created my team, so for example, my campaign managers, I could have one. Most campaigns do have one, but speaking to that example with the Greece I alluded to, I have two. And so one is older. He's a pastor. He's in his 50s, and I partner him with a younger. She's my age. She's 27. She is a correctional officer, and they're my campaign managers. And then I have a research team that has someone who does not practice any faith, right? And she's an older woman. She works at a university, and she's working with an older white male who's born in Rock Island. He has a history or he has experience in researching criminal analysis. He's about in his 50s or 60s. Excuse me. And they're partnered with a younger black male who's a college age student. And we also have a Mexican American in the research team, and she's she's a little younger than I am, so she's in her mid-20s. We also have, I have three Mexican Americans, and that's around that same age. One is currently a student studying history and political science.
Oh, nice.
And minor in Spanish. And then I also have members who are work on the Arsenal, and some who voted for different separate people in this past election. You follow me?
Wow.
And so I try to get everybody together, and it doesn't amaze me anymore because I've learned this over some time, but it's still beautiful. Is that we're a lot more alike than we are different.
I'll snap my fingers.
And that's what we gotta be willing to and have a certain approach to and embrace.
I think even celebrating our differences,
Yes.
when we recognize that.
Yes.
And so I really like the difference in age. I think that's important because when you think about it, not only are you not only you're only one person, but you're also only bringing, one perspective,
Yes.
from your own lived experiences. And so when you generate a team that can bring multiple perspectives,
Most definitely.
and
they live throughout Rock Island. They live in Southwest Rock Island. They live in the West End Rock Island. They live downtown. They live on the Hilltop. And so we're trying to tap in, and we're not going to cover everything, of course, right? But I did the best I could to get the best people that have these different perspectives, and that I trust and get some work done, and that trust me, more importantly, behind a common goal. And I'm very blessed and fortunate to have the team I do because they're awesome.
So when reaching out to your community members, how do your team members reach out to all groups of individuals in terms of educating them on this upcoming election and really asking those important questions? What are those pressing issues? Because obviously some of those issues are widespread, but they impact each individual group differently. And so is your group and your team, as well as yourself, educating yourself on how that varies from one group to the other?
People you meet. And so I read a book I think it's called The Power of Who. And it basically says we know everybody we need to know already. I say that again, you know everybody you need to know already. So you may know someone that knows the next person, right? And so I know the next person because I know you, right? And so, but what you have to be willing to do is open your mouth and go to those areas. And so we've had some events. My event team we announced September, so we had some events, and so that allowed people to come. And once you have, so for example, members of the refugee community, came to a couple of our events, and so that allows us to tap into more, and genuinely. And so that's one example. We take any opportunity, and we believe that whoever we meet, they're there for a reason, and we're there to listen, and we're there to meet members of their community to understand those needs. Because I look forward to being the mayor that is the mayor from east to west and north to south of all Rock Island, and that will refuse to neglect any area of Rock Island. So that means I cannot neglect the people that make up those areas.
Right, absolutely. And I think that that's kind of a big issue when we think about equity, is that oftentimes there are groups of individuals that are unseen and unheard. And some of those groups are the most vulnerable and the most impacted by those pressing issues that you speak of.
Take advantage of them.
Yep.
This is call a spade a spade.
Yep.
When you especially when you know that a group of people or a population is disconnected for whatever reason, and as a leader, you don't care to seek or find out why, and or to include and learn how you can help or get them involved. In my opinion, you're taking advantage of them simply.
And I think the education piece is huge.
Definitely.
If they are not aware of what their power is or how to have a voice, and like you said, taking advantage of that idea of not reaching them and or putting the responsibility on the residents themselves. Because leaders, I think, you meet people where they're at, right?
Exactly. And if you're of that mindset, or if you're doing what we're talking about now and taking advantage of those people like that, it makes me believe, and leads me to believe, that you're more interested in having power.
Yes, I agree with that. That's a great way to put it. Next question, how will you redistribute, and this kind of sticks with that whole equity piece, redistribute resources and power amongst all groups of individuals? So we kind of talk about making it so that they are seen and heard, but how are you intending to give them power? And also, like I said, when we think about all of the resources that you have in Rock Island, how will you redistribute those so that it's equitable, so that those individuals maybe that didn't have access before have access now?
You bring them to the table.
Okay.
And I think the most important word I use there is bring.
Right,
bring
absolutely.
them to the table. A lot of people say, well, if you're not at the table, you can't make a decision. Well, sometimes you have an invitation.
Right.
And sometimes the person who controls the invitation may not invite you. And so, being mayor, I will be in more of a position to be the one inviting, which would mean I have to go seek people out. And so, I just firmly believe that a lot of our issues in Rock Island come from us not being welcoming and seeking and actively seeking out what we can do to serve all of our residents, because we're not Chicago, we're not Denver, we're not Los Angeles, we're not any of these bigger cities. And I'm not saying this is okay, but we cannot, as a Rock Island, we're not in a space where we can say, oh, don't go over there. It's just that area. And use our resources and focus so much on other areas that may be okay and say, oh, this part is good. Because by doing that, those people who are in those good areas, so to speak, have to expend more financial or capital to make up for those areas that we are neglecting. And so if we don't take an all-in approach to all of Rock Island, all Rock Islanders will continue to be disgruntled and unhappy with the direction in which we're going. And so you have to actively seek out all parties, those who have been disenfranchised historically and those who have not been. Everybody is important. No one's more important. And that may mean, Natasha, doing some impact studies on how the services we provide and how they impact all communities. And are we doing those the right way? Right. And that may mean investing in a diversity, equity, inclusion officer or consultant of some degree at the city level. And so we're willing to go down any avenue to obtain that goal.
And I like how you mentioned you do the comparison with those bigger cities. So am I understanding that correctly, that you're saying that Rock Island is manageable, the size of it? You know, it's not that it's so large that you're dividing it up into, like, you know, I think Chicago, for example, is divided. You've got the South Side, you have, you know, and even in those divisions, they're large. You're dealing with a large area, whereas Rock Island's manageable in that aspect. So I like that you point that out.
You can get anywhere in Rock Island in 7 minutes. You can go from one side of Rock Island to the other side of Rock Island in 7 minutes. Maybe 8 if you catch the wrong light.
So I mean, and I think that's awesome that you're seeing that as manageable, as opposed to looking at it as you're covering a large area. I feel like in terms of redistributing resources, what are the resources that you feel like are in need of redistributing the most, at least that you've learned in your campaign?
So with our campaign, we're focusing on affordable and attractive housing.
Okay.
And so there's monies available that we can make our residents more aware of. We can also seek out more monies and partners and programs to, we have some beautiful homes in Rock Island that just need a little tender love and care. And we have also had space to create more. So we're going to tap into and ensure best way we can affordable and attractive housing. And so the resources we can look at there. We want to invest in a clean and green economy. And so resources such as renewable energy, I think could be not only environmentally friendly, but not only will it bring jobs and good paying jobs to Rock Island and Rock Islanders, but it also may provide some revenue for the city of Rock Island if we're a little aware of how solar energy works and in getting in there early, how it can be so beneficial for a city. And so we're going to ensure the best we can a clean and green economy. And then also we're looking at healthy and stable communities. And so how you do that, you tap into the services that we provide at the city level. And you partner those with the people who they're working with, which is actually people that live in those communities. And so you take a deep dive and you get residents more involved in what makes up a healthy, stable community. Because until there's a level of accountability and involvement beyond just the city hall building, all of that, especially healthy and stable communities, will not be obtainable because there isn't any communication. And then that leaves us to continue to do things how they are because it may be protocol now, and that's how we have always done things. And so we gotta address that.
Yeah, kind of creating some new solutions and approaches. Okay, so another question is, in one of your recorded presentations, you mentioned equity and equality in education, and I'm curious to know what that means to you. Like, what does that look like, sound like, what does it feel like? And from multiple perspectives, you know, not just from, you know, the Black community perspective in education, but also the Hispanic. I'm thinking of English language learners, refugees, transgender, lesbian, gay. What exactly does equity and equality in education look like and mean to you?
So as a historian, I reference this again. I hate the word assimilation.
So does Ibram Kendi.
Yeah, so that's a great book, by the way.
Yes.
And that's what we got to stop doing. And you spoke to first English learning students, right? They have something that is so special that because of assimilation, we don't see that way. They speak another language. Right. I don't speak another language. Right. I wish I did. Right. I wish I could. And so what we can do to foster equity in that example is stop telling our parents or insinuating either by literature or however we're doing it, whether it's a school district, or whether it's city involvement by once the refugees get here, whatever it is, we gotta demand of them very respectfully that they don't assimilate and that they stay true to what they have.
Right.
So that way we can learn and we can bring that into our world, because that provides and betters our perspective. I mean, so that young lady who is in kindergarten learning English, now she can teach Burmese because she speaks at home. And so she can teach to her peers, her classmates. And now my nephew, who's in that class, essentially, he's coming home and he's learning Burmese. And so maybe 10 years from now, or 15 years, or whatever the year when they finish school, maybe my nephew might be minoring in Burmese.
Right.
And so that creates the world, not necessarily now, but the world we want to be in. And so it's about partnerships. We don't have an active partnership with our school district. And so the city can have an active partnership with the school district. This is absurd when you think that we have one public school district in Rock Island. It speaks to that manageable piece. All these bodies, employers, we have employers and we have students that come in this district, Rock Island. And we partner with them and we do what we can to continue to learn and refuse to subject others to assimilate, because that's how the status quo is. It'd be beautiful because people travel far, far away, spend lots of money to get culture, experience a different culture. We have a lot of that here, so why wouldn't people be willing to come to Rock Island if we tap into that culture? So now we have tourism dollars, and now we have more people living here, which makes Rock Islanders happier.
Yeah, and you talked about English language learners, and what is your awareness of what the school district is struggling with currently in terms of equity and equality? What are those pressing issues right now?
Speaking outside of the school district, I'm a coach, and I'm involved. But I know they're doing a lot of everything. I know they're looking into how they can be more equitable. They have active things they're doing now, which I'm a part of, I would say, to some degree. And so that's one thing they're doing. But what I guess it is, America, like I say, seems to have had this awakening last year. And so I think that attributes to a lot of it, because now with this awakening, a lot of people are saying, whoa, we've been doing this wrong. And so it's starting something. So now they're saying, whoa, well, we didn't have an equity manager. We didn't have policies that ensured equity. And so I think being aware is a lot of the state, not only the school district may be in, but a lot of agencies may be in right now.
So do you think that maybe the school district is not
only the school district may be in, but a lot of agencies may be in right now.
So do you think that maybe the school district is not really aware of what their equity issues are, in terms of, like, I'm speaking of, is there disproportionality in special ed? We talk about equity in there. That's kind of like a major issue overall in education. Thinking about equity and access, we talk about access to resources and power, and students, like non-white students, having the access to those higher level education courses and access to scholarships and things of that nature. So where do you feel like the district is in terms of equity on those particular topics?
So speaking to the awareness, I don't think their lack of awareness, if I'm saying like that, is malintended. And so what I do believe is that with this new enlightenment that most of America has, it has given opportunity to just reevaluate where they are. And I think that's where they are. They're kind of reevaluating, and which is inspirational, because a lot of these problems they're aware of, especially our new superintendent, who's been here for a couple of years. Great guy. A lot of these problems we've been aware of, they've been talked about. But with what happened over the past of last year, I think it provided a space where it's more active approach to tackle those issues, and there's a lot of them. There's a lot of them, and so it's hard to tackle. It's hard to eat a whole burger at once, right? You got to bite by bite, and so when I say the awareness, I think what I'm got at is because it's enlightenment, they can begin to tackle things that not only they were aware of, but they have a greater awareness of, and maybe their perspective of the problem that it was they may have knew already existed.
And maybe the larger impact of it as
Most
well.
definitely.
And so I like how you point out making that connection, that there's not that connection between the city council members and the mayor and the school district, which is extremely important to kind of bridge that gap.
Most definitely.
Because you work as a team. So that kind of leads me into wondering how you intend to kind of bridge that gap in your campaign, and if you are voted in as mayor, what plan do you have in place or solution to kind of fix that issue?
So the good thing is I've had some relationships already, and so it starts with a relationship, and then deciding how we can actually be an active partner. And there's a lot of different ways you can do that. Something as simple as, okay, all third graders in the Rock Island School District, there's a certain day you're going to tour the city hall, you're going to tour the fire department, you're going to go through all these departments, you're going to learn about the city. That's a social studies day. That might inspire the next mayor of Rock
Right,
Island.
the curriculum I think is huge.
We might find another firefighter. People are going to stay home now. So little initiatives. There's space that the city owns. Can the city? I'm assuming that the school district owns. Can the city help them find partners to build upon this space that will service students and the community? That's an active partnership, and so it's communication. Nothing's done without communication. And at this point, there isn't any lines of communication on a regular basis between the school district and the city, and that's where the work and what can be done will be addressed.
Yeah, because like you think about mayor, just talking with the superintendent, how are those relationships? Where does that stand right now? How often are the leaders in the school district and the leaders of the city coming together and having those conversations? Because I feel like I've been in education for 15 years, and when it comes to politics, I feel like education is lost in politics. It's not talked about a lot. There's not a lot of advocacy for education. That always ends up on the back burner. And you talk about our students being our future, right? And them leading the way. But how does that happen when we don't really bring those issues and address them and make education a priority?
Most definitely. Something as simple. So people is a large debate about school resource officers, right? And should they be in school? Should they have guns? Should they all that? And so while I understand the argument against having SROs in schools, I've had experiences. They were in the school when I was in school. I was actually put in handcuffs by one because I didn't sit behind a line during a basketball game. That's just a side note. And so, trust me, I understand that how that can be problematic and traumatic for students. But I think we can utilize officers in the school as a benefit, and it can benefit everyone. They don't got to be there. The school, you're a teacher. You have principals, vice principal, deans, counselor. You have all the people who are there to discipline students and do all these things. That's not an officer's job. So when they're in the schools, why can't we have these officers teach a class? So now the kid whose parents, due to their experiences and their parents' experiences, tells that kid, don't be a cop. Cops ain't nothing. We don't do that over here. But now, every day, every period, they're in a room with an officer, learning about what the job really is, learning about what the pay is. They're learning about why officers are important. And that officer is learning from those kids because they're not there to do what the deans are doing. And so that's something that can be facilitated by the city, which is the officer is a city employee because they provide services to the city, and then the school district, which is tasked with teaching our kids at a mass level. We can start to change and recruit officers from those communities that we say need to be more represented.
How do we make that a two-way street, though? Because you think about, we're educating our students to respect the job of a police officer, but how can we educate our police officers to respect the community members? Because that goes both ways.
Most definitely.
We talk about that. I talk about that all the time in my classroom. Is I don't see myself and I don't present myself in my classroom as an authoritative figure. You know, that equal balance of power in knowing my students to know that that classroom is just as much theirs as it is mine.
Most definitely.
So I think that that's important to build the relationship, and that it's not necessarily revolving around educating our youth about the job as a police officer, but more so how can we build that relationship outside the work of a police officer, but more of you're a community member, I'm a community member, if that makes sense.
That makes perfect sense. So that's one example that I'll talk to you about how we can bring the people together. So to answer that question there for you, how can we, because it is a two-way street, and by no way am I applying that officer being in that classroom teaching students that it should be a one-way education for them, where the officer's teaching about why it's important to respect officers and this, that, and the third. I do think it can be two-way in that classroom, but at a larger scale, I believe we should have officers, any officer that is an officer at Rock Island, before they get a badge and a gun and go on their beat, they should have 100+ hours of community work. It can be during their training hours. They can get paid for it, but you're going to coach that little league team. You're going to teach the trumpet. You're going to farm down at the yard there until you have 100+ hours, because now those communities see you outside of a badge and a gun. And also we're going to form a commission, a police and community relations commission that allows for us to start building relationships. So we're going to have a commission that has law enforcement agents. This commission is also going to have students. It's going to have ex-felons. So people in the community that don't normally communicate and that are affected and have been traumatized will have a way to begin to have a dialogue that will, I believe, once you talk to people, most people are not bad people. You talk to them, you know better, you do better. And so there's many things we could do to foster a relationship, but my point is in saying that is that we can take more active approaches to recruiting our kids by educating them behind what the job is, and that isn't just exclusive to police officers. It's firefighters, it's city clerks, it's whatever the city is tasked with providing for residents. We have to educate them behind that and the importance of it and the work that is done there, because you can make a good living, you can take care of your family and be a great community member in those roles if you're aware of them.
So how do you prioritize going beyond just the job itself, but their knowledge of their education in terms of how the system runs, how to function, and what the purpose of the system is? And we talk about, city council members, like what is their role, and how does their power impact them as a community member, and what decisions are made. And I think most importantly, I'm thinking more along the lines of how do they get involved? So we talked earlier about so many of the community members, or however many of the community members, are not educated on the elections and what that means, and maybe even the role of what a mayor plays, like what decisions you're in charge of. How can we start that education at the elementary level? Because I think that that's lacking in education, generally speaking, is, how the government and, systems function, how they set up and how they operate. So I guess how does that fall into the priorities of educating kids beyond just here's what a city clerk does, and if you have this job, you can make a living and support your family? if that makes sense. I mean,
No,
I guess.
that makes perfect sense. I don't know if you may be familiar with the JA program where they.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
I think something similar to that. It didn't have to be that exact replica form,
right?
But something similar to that with the city behind a city. What the city does and city bodies and arms do can be fostered in the district. It's just about how we're going to do it. Anything you can think of in your brain can be done. Mm-hmm. It's just about figuring it out. And so what we can do is actively be in those spaces. The mayor can regularly. Why can't the mayor be at every school in Rock Island at some point in the school year? Mm-hmm. We only have a number of them. There's so many days. Why can't other officials do that? And so we just have to be bold enough and creative enough to get outside of the city hall. And also, one thing we don't do well is market ourselves at any level. Mm-hmm. We have, every year we have the most National Honor Merit scholars at Rock Island High School. We have some of the smartest kids. Mm-hmm. That's a fact. The numbers say that. If you look it up, Rock Island High School brings out the best students in the area. Why don't people know that?
Right.
And so we had to speak to our greatness at Rock Island. And so when you speak to your greatness, that includes what you're doing. And as you educate people and what you're doing, marketing is real. Mm-hmm. And I believe that will, I hate this term, but have a trickle-down effect on where we're trying to get at.
And I like that. I like that you say that because there aren't a lot of schools in Rock Island, that being a mayor, you can actually be present in those schools.
Absolutely.
And I think that's important, that let's disrupt the status quo. Let's change the narrative of what it's always been. And it sounds like that you continue to reinforce that, of doing things different and kind of getting beyond that traditional approach to the leadership role, which I think is huge.
Assemblies. I haven't been to an assembly in a long time. I'm sure you haven't either with the COVID. But kids love assemblies. Mm-hmm. They get on the gym floor, they have their stage, and they're all in their groups. And most times they don't know who's coming.
Right.
But whoever's on the stage is the most important person in the world, especially if you say, the principal gets up there and say, hey guys, our mayor's here today. Every kid might not change every kid's life, but 5, 6.
But imagine the mayor looking like them, that they can see someone in leadership that's not custodian staff, because you think about how diverse and inclusive our leadership, at that level. So to see someone that looks like them, it's empowering. So I think that's extremely important. I love that idea. Well, I'll go ahead and wrap up the interview. I really appreciate you sharing some of your ideas and your vision with us, and wish you the best of luck.
Thank
Hopefully
you.
It turns out in your favor.
I hope so. I told my team, candidates don't lose or don't win elections, they lose them. Mm-hmm. The team does. So my team's doing a great job, and we feel pretty good. And I'm going to do my best not to lose the election for all the work they're doing. So thank you, and I appreciate my team so much.
And I agree with that. And just on that note, what do you plan to do to still stay committed in your community, even if you weren't voted in as mayor?
I plan on renovating my home that I'm renovating on 15th Street.
Nice.
I'm moving in and continue to do the work that I've been doing at whatever level that God allows me to do so. Mm-hmm. I'm not going anywhere. That my mortgage is going to have to be paid every month, and so it's in Rock Island, so I'll be here.
Yeah, well, Rock Island is fortunate enough to have someone that is as committed as you are. So, thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate that.